I'm Billy S, welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm letting you in on my personal journey as we talk about the games I played in 2023. I actually had a previous version of this script written and recorded as a top 10 list, but I realized a few days after that I wasn't satisfied with it. I was so meticulous and stuck to my rules, and that's not my channel. That's not what I'm about. Gaming is so much fun, and I want my videos to be fun as well. I got so caught up in needing to defend my picks when, in reality, I don't need to justify why I enjoyed the experiences I did this year. So, enjoy as I go over every notable game I played this year, from games in my backlog I finally got around to the actual 2023 releases, and I'll end the video with my top 3 personal games. But before I get to the fun stuff, I want to address an aspect of 2023 that some gamers are willfully ignoring. You see, 2023 was a great year for the consumers, but it was awful for those developers behind some of your favorite games. The amount of layoffs going around the industry at the moment is staggering and, in my opinion, unacceptable. There are some amazing, talented people out there who are getting laid off because their parent companies want to make a quick buck, and it's not sustainable, because who wants to risk working in an industry where your job isn't secure? We need unions, we need fair treatment and pay, and this goes across the board. To every game developer out there, if we truly care about this medium, we need to care for the people who are responsible for cultivating our experiences. And in my opinion, this all came to a head at the Game Awards, where the actual award winners weren't even given enough time to express their gratitude to their communities. Neil Newbon's speech upon receiving his award for Best Performance as Astarion was beautiful and touching, as he let the people of the Baldur's Gate 3 community, and honestly the gaming community worldwide, know that even if you're struggling or you fear you're not being seen, you're not alone. When Larian Studios won Game of the Year for Baldur's Gate 3, they dedicated their speech to those they lost along the way, including Jim Southworth, their cinematic animation lead, who passed away from cancer just last month. Only for that teleprompter to tell them to wrap it up. If the literal Game of the Year winners can't get more than 1 minute on one of the biggest stages in the industry to give a genuine heartfelt speech, there is something very wrong. So I hope that in 2024, we can all as players have more grace towards the developers who work on our favourite games. They deserve more recognition, and I hope the industry trends that way. And what better segue then to talk about the Game Awards Game of the Year and the most recent game I completed, Baldur's Gate 3. Seeing a tabletop RPG like D&D translated so perfectly into video game form is so astounding to me. The general boom of the franchise in recent years has really led to a resurgence in this genre that the team at Larian Studios have been cultivating for a while. Divinity 2: Original Sin is one of their original forays into turn-based role-playing games, and actually the game I tried playing before caving and getting Baldur's Gate 3. The systems weren't completely for me. I much prefer the presentation and mechanics of actual D&D, but my partner really enjoyed his playthrough of Divinity 2, and it shows that Larian are practically championing this genre that is single-handedly being revived, to the point where other role-playing games are actively terrified at the precedent Baldur's Gate 3 has set. Because Larian Studios raised the bar significantly in the way they layer and weave together narrative threads in a way that every action has consequences. The way you finish a quest could affect interactions and moments down the line, butterfly effect style, on a scope I have never seen before. Or how about the way you tackle a quest? In Act 1, one of the main objectives is to infiltrate a goblin camp. Momo O'Brien on Twitter compiled a 2-minute clip of her own YouTube video on the game that pretty much does the best job of explaining why Baldur's Gate 3 is such a staggering leap forwards in terms of player choice. From seducing a goblin priestess, to poisoning the alcohol of the partying goblins, to walking in and killing everyone, to befriending a pair of giant spiders and using them to murder the goblin chief. I've linked their tweet and their YouTube channel in the description, go check them out. The genre's gameplay won't be for everyone. Turn-based real-time battle strategy games can really drag in certain aspects, and having to constantly quick-save before major battles and decisions in case everything goes south is par for the course, but I really had a lot of fun. However, I would recommend taking Baldur's Gate 3 slowly. I blitzed Act 2 and Act 3 in around 2 weeks, and I couldn't put the game down, but also ended up getting hit with fatigue towards the end, and I'd hate for anyone else to go through that. Now, I'm gonna go and chill with Baby Girl Astarion, Bestie Karlak, and the assertive Lae'zel as we go ruin somebody's life. Flinging myself back in time, I played a few games for my backlog at the start of the year that you can actually see my thoughts on already, because I made multiple videos on them. Unravel was a fun puzzle platformer that sees you exploring the memories of a house and the people that live within it as a little yarn man. It has some interesting mechanics that force you to figure out the optimal path through each level, and has some genuinely beautiful scenery inspired by the developer's hometown and country. I played a few Mario games. Mario + Rabbids Kingdom Battle is genuinely one of the best Mario spin-offs I've ever played. Every character feels enticing to use, it's fun to upgrade their gear, and explore the different areas of the Mushroom Kingdom that have been infected by the Rabbids' accidental invasion. It's XCOM, but with Mario and the Rabbids, and it's phenomenal. It's a hard game. Some of the ultimate challenges required a ton of thought for me to strategize through, and add the DLC campaign, Donkey Kong Adventure, into the mix, and you've got hours upon hours of strategic, cover shooter strategy gunplay, combined with the zany comedy of the Rabbids that's on point here. I'm really looking forward to getting around to the sequel. I also played Super Mario Sunshine for the first time. It was the only 3D Mario I'd yet to play, and I can see the charm. It's janky, I never felt like I fully was able to control Mario as precisely as I would have liked, but that jank is part of why speedruns and high-level tech in Sunshine feel phenomenal to watch. The theming of the worlds is brilliant, and some of the missions are genuinely a lot of fun. There's just a lot of questionable design decisions that have me comfortably with Sunshine as one of my least favorite 3D Marios, but I'm still glad I tried it. And I can't mention Mario this year without bringing up the surprise reveal of Super Mario Bros. Wonder. I've already done a full 8-video series on my channel talking about every level in great detail, but my overall thoughts are that 2D Mario is truly back, and innovated itself in the same way that Odyssey innovated the 3D space. We have an entirely new animation style designed from the ground up with so much charm, love, and care put into every aspect. From the way Mario will run into a pipe and his hat remains behind so he has to snatch it, to the faces the characters make as they move, being so much more expressive. We've got the iconic new power-up elephant form, which is truly a blessing. It acts as an easy mode for a lot of levels and provides the player with some great offensive options. And the fact the trunk can spray water if you pass through is used to great effect in World 6's fire levels. The Wonder Flowers make every single level this gift you get to unwrap, and it's a surprise every time just what zany escapades you'll get up to. Zooming into the sky as a hoppy cat, turning into a bowling ball, making everything long and stretchy, or my favorite effect, turning Mario into a sentient wubba slime that can stick to walls. Some amazing levels come from this, all set to a gorgeous aesthetic and a great flower kingdom to explore. The soundtrack is stellar, and contrary to the critics who called it unmemorable, I disagree. I think people need to let these themes sit for a while, they will grow on you, and if they don't, the musical sequences definitely will. That being said, in the next game, can we make Yoshi's easy mode toggleable so I can play him in normal gameplay with proper challenge? Thank you very much. When it comes to older backlog games, I played a few big, mature, story-focused titles this year. I got to experience the haunting journey of Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, a game that delves into the mind by portraying an accurately researched version of someone facing psychosis. Every action you make in Senua's Sacrifice is scrutinized. The voices Senua hears follows her throughout the game, sometimes helping, sometimes harming, but they're all a part of her. It's such a unique experience that I can't quite pin down. It's a story of loss, a story of regret, and a story of overcoming that pain. But for Senua, it's obviously not so simple. I won't share anything more with you, I'll just urge you to give the game a try and check out my video on the topic, because this is one of those you gotta go in blind games. On the JRPG front, I tried out Chained Echoes, a late release in 2022 that aimed to hit that old nostalgia factor of the SNES era while telling a mature story. The world you explore has so much more to it than the areas you get to see, and you really do feel like a small cog in a much larger puzzle. The characters and the designs are really cool, the battle system involving you leveling your moves to make them stronger and ultimately being able to unlock so many different perks on the skill trees makes the game infinitely replayable, and the gameplay and areas you explore are reminiscent of a 2D Xenoblade game, as you'll be exploring, slaying monsters, and completing quests before progressing the main plot. But I mainly remember Chained Echoes outside of the great music and aesthetics for just how grim the game ends up being. It feels like, and I hate to make this comparison, but it is accurate, Game of Thrones but as a JRPG. Characters die, world events happen that are genuinely harrowing, and by the end it gets a bit exhausting. It feels like the gore is sometimes there for the sake of it. It's a game that feels like it has more to tell, and I sincerely hope the developers, with the success they had, can tell more of the story in the future. Sticking with JRPGs, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is peak fiction. Monolith Soft have made a perfect trilogy with Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3 now all out, available to public on Nintendo Switch systems, and what a story they have told. As the ending of the trilogy, combined with its future redeemed story DLC released this year, it wraps up every little plot point in a perfect bow. I don't have any complaints or outstanding questions, though in classic Xenoblade fashion, I did have to wait for the lore experts to hit us up after I saw the DLC ending. I firmly believe if you want to start Xenoblade, that Xenoblade 3 has the most customizable user experience, the most streamlined areas to explore, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, and easily the best core cast in the series. And dare I say, I think the main characters of Xenoblade 3, Noah, Mio, Taion, Uni, Lance, and Senna, are my favorite party members from any video game. By the end, I knew all 6 of them inside and out. Their wants, their dreams, their goals. Their interactions with each other are so wholesome and fascinating and unique, and while they have their core dynamics with each other, the game isn't afraid to have them act outside of those roles. The supporting cast are brilliant as well. You meet so many heroes you can recruit to your party as a 7th member who you can swap out and travel with you, and you can eventually adopt their classes into your core group to create a truly unique party setup. Combine this with that classic heartbreaking Xenoblade storytelling, and you've got a game that made me cry multiple times. The ending of the base game, when Where We Belong starts playing, oh, it gets me. And then the DLC came out this year, which just added an extra 15 hours or so to the game. An entire new region to explore, densely populated with quests, monsters, exploration spots, things to find, references to past games, on top of another core cast of fun characters. Matthew and A make a great starting pair with the hot-headed brawler and the cool collected sword fighter, and then being joined by Nicole and Glimmer, who keep the party and the gameplay connected to the themes of the main game due to their relations as Keves and Agnes soldiers. Before just outright giving us the fan service with Shulk and Rex, the protagonists of the first 2 games, Ugh, and let me tell you, just before I end this Xenoblade segment, this game single-handedly revived Rex's reputation in the fanbase because, look, Xenoblade 2 had its issues. I love the game, but it's a far from perfect experience, and Rex specifically got a lot of shit. So it's nice to see him grown up and being an absolute broken monster of destruction. Another trilogy I played this year for the first time, Mass Effect. This was partly because my partner is a big Mass Effect fan, and the games were always in my backlog. So I made Jenny Shepherd and jumped right in. And I'm impressed that all 3 of these games have aged rather gracefully. The graphics of the Legendary Edition certainly give them all a great facelift, but the gameplay itself, like the gunplay, felt really smooth. I didn't find myself using any of the special abilities in the first game though because they felt really awkward to control, but by the second and third games I'd gotten a complete handle on how to shoot fireballs out of my hands, and swapping out guns and upgrading my attacks felt really good. Mass Effect 2 is where I feel the gameplay side of things peaked, as 3 took a bit more of a modern cover shooter approach with a lot of gameplay segments that felt more on rails and army focused. It's hard to explain, there was just a different sensation between all 3 games, and Mass Effect 2 just has that vibe. I was here though for the characters, and if there's one thing BioWare is good at, it's making fun and interesting companions. Naturally, I wanted to romance Garrus, and spent the entire first game trying to get with him, only to find out that he wasn't romanceable until the second game. Instead, I had Liara trying to come on to me for 5 minutes after she boarded the ship, and Kaiden being cardboard. Y'all tried to convince me Ashley was some hateful space racist, but she has valid reason for her character being the way it is, and ultimately when it came down to that choice between her and Kaiden, bye-bye cardboard. Tali and Garrus ended up being my 2 main companions though, which I think makes sense. They're the only 2 characters who remain in your crew for all 3 games, assuming they survive the suicide mission in 2. You go through so much with both of them, especially Tali, as you effectively save her entire species, have her back when they try to exile her, and she's just adorable. While on the other side of the coin, Garrus becoming Batman wasn't on my bingo card, but I did jokingly tell my partner at the end of Mass Effect 1 that Garrus wasn't joining the Spectres. He felt like a vigilante at heart, and I was right. His smooth, dulcet tones got to me. I'm a Turian fucker, I have no regrets. Having them both there on that final mission as we attempted to make it to the Citadel to activate the catalyst felt correct. And now I'm caught up. I understand why people love Mass Effect. I'm one of you now, and I want more. One of the earliest games I had the pleasure of playing this year was Hi-Fi Rush by Tango Gameworks, and that alone shocked me to no end. The Evil Within team making a rhythm-based hack and slash? And yet somehow this Saturday morning cartoon aesthetic just worked. Chai, Peppermint, and the gang were hilarious, with cheesy dialogue that worked because it fit the world they were in. The plot was full of slapstick humor, action-packed set pieces, and a nice happy ending to tie everything together. But it's the gameplay that shines so bright. Every movement, every attack is all set to the beat of the music for each level. It's your goal to time your attacks to the beat as best you can to combo your way to victory. You can play without this feature if it's too stressful, but I found it really rewarding to rack up those combos, as the game urged me to play in a way that forced mastery of its mechanics. The levels you explore are vast and surprisingly dense, with secrets to find and optional challenges to overcome. The music is so good, with some amazing original pieces, as well as licensed music from actual rock and roll icons. The audio design absolutely carries for the experience, and I'm so glad the developers were recognized at the Game Awards for this specifically. Having every animation, every attack, every background element timed to the beats of those songs, and having to give the player satisfying feedback and sounds, they nailed it in a perfect way. Sit down, pop in Hi-Fi Rush, and wear some headphones. You won't regret it. Another somewhat stylized game, and by stylized I mean retro, was F-Zero 99, the newest addition to the overgrowing arsenal of 99-style battle royales under Nintendo's command. I don't think anybody expected to see this franchise again, let alone under this genre, but it works. It's not a brand new F-Zero game in the way people wanted, as it mainly reuses the tracks and art direction of the SNES original, but the way it plays and the mechanics at large are modernized. Racing to not be in the bottom percentile of the running order so you're not retired out is exhilarating. Crashing into opponents in an attempt to destroy their cars is addictive, and just like Tetris 99, which I also played a lot of this summer, you have that urge to say, just one more game, I'll get a win this time. And another retro game I played this year, and by retro, I mean literally developed by Retro Studios. I just want to gush about Metroid Prime Remastered for a little while, because, fun fact, when I first started this channel, one of my first videos was going to be on Metroid Prime. I'd just played it for the first time, I had this 15-minute review idea, but it never went anywhere. I felt it was too quick and I didn't go in depth enough in my script. So a few years later, seeing this shadow-dropped release for a cheaper price tag certainly had me excited. I want more people to experience Metroid Prime because I think it's the perfect 3D Metroidvania in the purest sense of the genre. The 2D Metroid experience is perfectly translated to 3D with various different locations to explore, doors and obstacles that can only be opened by collecting special power-ups, elevators and shortcuts that connect the entire world together, and some of the most memorable moments I've had in a long time in any game. Exploring the sunken frigate Orpheon with that gorgeous melody in the background had me on the edge of my seat because anything could have swam out of the gloom. Or escaping the pirate base in Frendrana Drifts when they turn off the lights and you've got to use your thermal visor while actual Metroids flit around above you. Whew. It wasn't the only GameCube-era title to come to the Switch either, as the first two Pikmin games got a re-release on the lead-up to Pikmin 4. I didn't get the chance to purchase either of these, but hey, they're accessible now, and this franchise that was once languishing at the back of Nintendo's IPs has suddenly grown to become a mini juggernaut of its own right. And that's because of Pikmin 4. I played it after getting back from my summer holiday, and I'm not gonna lie, it's in my contention for Game of the Year, and had I a little more nostalgia for the series, it actually might have been. Pikmin 4 is the perfect real-time strategy game for anyone looking to get into the genre. It's incredibly welcoming to newcomers, and while the tutorials get off to a nagging start, the moment those training wheels come off, you're able to explore all these regions at your pace and leisure. This game is actually, for me, in contention for one of the best looking on the Switch. Every environment has been meticulously crafted to look as beautiful as possible, and running around on your new doggo Ochi, collecting treasures with your army of colourful Pikmin, has never felt so amazing. I'd only played Pikmin 3 prior to this, and by god, I understand why people were so annoyed with Pikmin 3's direction for the series, because seeing how Pikmin 4 follows the ideas of the second game, but with the art direction of the third game, thank God, the dungeons and caverns add so much replayability and extra content. I never played 2, and even I got a shiver at seeing the submerged castle in the third area. And what about Dandori? Going up against the AI to obtain the most treasure, or completing those stages where you have to collect the treasure in a specific time limit, really got my brain going, and I became a tactical general on the battlefield. I haven't even gotten to mention night missions, or the colourful cast of characters that I ended up caring about, not you, or the designs of the enemies. There's so much to see and do in Pikmin 4, and I can only urge you all to pick up the game for yourself because it genuinely is that good. And while you're playing Pikmin 4, consider subscribing to the channel. We're trying to reach 20,000 subscribers by the end of June 2024, and I think we can do it. Be sure to parry that subscribe button to stay up to date on all my future videos. So early this year, we had the Last of Us HBO show air, which I found absolutely fabulous. The pacing was a bit fast for my liking, as the show could have used an extra episode or two to flesh out some of the lesser shown sequences, as well as the ending, but then it also gave me my favourite episode of TV this year, episode 3. Why am I bringing this up though? It's not a game. because I also, for the first time, played The Last of Us Remastered and The Last of Us Part 2. For the former, I'd watched YouTube playthroughs countless times back in 2013 and 2014, so it wasn't like playing a brand new game or anything, more like just ticking off the backlog by saying, yeah, I played The Last of Us. And it's still a phenomenal game. It never holds your hand in gameplay, and getting past those early game enemy sequences was brutal. I've never been the best at any form of shooter, and some of those early encounters had me dying over and over and over. The horror of the infected was unmatched. Clickers are still the most uncomfortable creatures in the world, though bloaters lost their shine a bit. I remember them being scary than they actually were, and I was surprised to realize that a majority of the enemy encounters were actually based around humans. I wanted more infected, something I could also say about the TV show. More infected, more of the zombies that make the world so harsh to live in. I guess I'm a little tired of the interpersonal conflicts of the factions that make up post-apocalyptic stories. I'm not playing these games for that, I'm playing them for the fucked up settings and the horrifying monsters that lurk within. I say this because I also played Part 2, and I have a few thoughts. One, the internet was so dramatic over a game that I felt was fine. Story spoilers for Part 2, I'll put a timestamp to the next game I cover in this video on the screen. I felt Joel's death was handled well. Viewers wanted an opportunity to say goodbye. They wanted to come to terms with what was about to happen, and yet in this society, you rarely get that. Joel's death was a shock, a surprise, and a betrayal. And ironically, it created the same reaction in the players that Ellie had. Anger, confusion. I won't dive any deeper, it's genuinely not a discourse I want to immerse myself in, I just don't understand some of the hate. On the flip side, I found the gunplay and enemies of Part 2 to be far superior to the first game. The new forms of infected gave the game some much needed variety, and once the scars were introduced to the mix, there was no going back, those fuckers were terrifying. Another hot take, Abby is the best and most fleshed out character in the game. I feel like I fully understood where she was coming from. I liked how different she felt from Ellie in both gameplay and personality. I really enjoyed the way the game handled her scenario by having us play Ellie's sequence and then switching to Abby to see her perspective on all the events. And her interactions with Lev and Yara were the cherry on top, as it were. By game's end, I was tired of Ellie, and I absolutely despise Tommy, but unlike most people, I'm at peace with that. She isn't a good person by the end of the game, and I feel a lot of the hate comes from people remembering the Ellie from Part 1 who was amazing and funny and witty and helpful, and people grow up. People change. I've had people in my life who I adored when they were younger, only for them to grow up and be incredibly problematic. It's life. Wherever you fall on the scale, I really enjoyed Part 2. I do think that the theming of revenge could have been a little less on the nose, it could have been handled better, but at this point, I am Last of Us outed. I'd like a hypothetical Part 3 to focus less on the conflicts of man and more on whatever the fuck they're gonna do about this infection, por favor. So I played The Last of Us Part 2 at my partner's house. I was on vacation for 2 months, and while there, I played a few other games as well. From my partner's library, I tried out Disco Elysium, and while I only got around a day and a half into the actual story and plot, I've already had more than enough unique experiences to tell it is a damn good game. The narrator absolutely knocks his role out of the park, playing the different voices in our main character's head. I started out wanting to be a rock star, only for me to reveal that fucking smile and everything went out the window. Trying to do an autopsy on the corpse was an ordeal in itself while Kuno cheers you the whole time. But for every struggle, there was a dice roll where I'd meet a near impossible check and I'd cheer. Kim is best boy. I don't understand why he feels like he would die for me if I asked, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of his character when I move next year, so I'll have access to my partner's gaming library full time. I also bought myself a few Switch indie games to enjoy on my vacay. I finally got around to playing Golf Story, a rather unique golf adventure game that reminded me very heavily of the old Mario Golf games. Your character is washed up, the people he meets are wild, and dare I say, quite weird. The golfing mechanics are surprisingly in-depth, and the scenarios are insane. One minute you're infiltrating a snow cult, the next you're solving a mysterious murder case, then you're fighting a disgraced wizard, two emos by your side who can summon zombies from the dead, before dealing with your ex-wife who is more than happy to leech off your success with her new boyfriend who happens to be a CEO. And the big reveal, this is all happening in Australia. I also tried out the sequel game they released at the end of last year, Sports Story, which promised to focus on a larger variety of sports and give you more of that zany yet fun gameplay we'd gotten from Golf Story. Only I dropped the game a few hours in. It just wasn't hooking me in the same way. There were too many minigames and quests you had to complete before you could even start golfing. The UI felt nicer, and I could tell a lot of work had been put into the game, but I just wanted to get to the sports. It's a shame, but not a surprise, given the developers of the title literally had a hidden dev room when the game first launched that aired their grievances with releasing the game too early. What a shame. Ultimately though, there was one game I played over that vacation that caught me by surprise, and it actually is one of my favourite games of the year. Have you heard of Cassette Beasts? Despite my love of Pokemon, I've always been apprehensive to try monster catching games outside of my comfort zone. I'm part of the problem. I get scared needing to learn a whole new system, and yet before I left on my vacation, a YouTuber I frequented recommended Cassette Beasts. And liking the vibes of what I saw, I made an impulse purchase, and I didn't regret it. Cassette Beasts is an isekai that sees you, the player, stranded on the interdimensional island of New Wirral. Everyone you meet has had the same fate as you, but everyone comes from different worlds, different timelines, some extremely different from your own, others with the most minor of changes, and you all must build a community and learn to live together, while finding the secrets of the island. I won't spoil the big plot elements. There are aspects of this game you need to experience blind for the best effect, but I can confirm it is great, it is surprisingly mature, and the monster catching element is fantastic. The titular Cassette Beasts are monsters found throughout New Wirral, and rather than catching them, you have to record them onto a blank cassette tape. You can then place the tape in your personal cassette player, and instead of sending out your beasts like in Pokemon, you turn into your beasts. That's right, there's a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon element to this game, let's go! There's also a fusion element that blows my mind, as you can fuse every single monster in this game together with every single other monster. There are thousands of combinations of fusion designs out there waiting to be seen by the player. And fusion works because you always have a companion traveling with you throughout New Wirral, and they'll always back you up in a fight. You always have two beasts active on your side, and attacks don't use the PP system, instead using a replenishable resource meter that fills up after each turn, think Octopath Traveler. I'm not even going to get into the new weakness chart you'll have to learn, or how every typing affects each other, or how shinies in this game are called bootlegs. You've just got to try the game out for yourself. The world and quest design is fantastic, allowing you to explore and complete quests completely at your leisure. Do you want to take on the ranger captains who act as this game's gym leaders? Maybe you want to take down the evil landkeepers who want to bring capitalism to the island. Or perhaps you want to explore the various train stations scattered about that will piece together the puzzle of escaping. Whatever the case, you're free to go about your day while listening to some of the best music I have heard all year, while vibing with your companions and maybe even starting a romance. Gender doesn't matter. All of the music tracks in this game are dynamic, with vocal and instrumental variants. For example, the town theme plays its instrumental form when you're outside, but if you enter one of the town's buildings, the vocals cut in. It makes going to the coffee shop to switch out companions a really relaxing affair. Or how about the fact that every battle theme also has a vocal variation that only triggers when you use fusion? Such a cool feature, and it made me excited to fuse when I heard a new theme because I'm thinking, ooh, new vocals! The compositions of Joel Bayless are stunning, the vocal work of Shelby Harvey brings these songs to life, and shout out to Emily Rakes and Robbie Reed Rees for their additional backing vocals and guitar on the main battle theme of the game. Everyone deserves a bit of credit here. It also has a dynamic difficulty you can change on a whim through various sliders, which raises accessibility, and upon beating the game for the first time, you also unlock the custom game mode, which allows you to further enhance the difficulty by activating Nuzlocke rules, as well as some randomizers to make the game more fun, including randomizing a species-given type for that playthrough, the moves beasts can learn upon leveling up, and even what beasts spawn and when. Plus, because Cassette Beasts has got an element of randomness to its world design that I won't spoil here, there's an option to even choose your own seed, which is perfect for official speedruns. I hope this convinced some of you monster catchers to pick this game up. There's even DLC I haven't gotten around to yet, but you can bet I'll be playing it when I've got some spare time. Now then, it's finally time to reveal my top 3 games of 2023. Starting off with the experience we'd all been waiting over 6 years for, The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. And what an absolutely stellar game experience that was. Every complaint I had about Breath of the Wild, which was further enhanced by the fact I did a full 100% playthrough of that game prior to playing Tears of the Kingdom, was addressed. Weapon degradation was fixed in my mind with the addition of the fuse ability, which allowed Link to attach whatever the heck he wants to a rusted weapon to create absolute chaos on the battlefield. I may be basic, but attaching a rocket to a shield will never get old, nor will attaching a minecart to a spear, or playing with various items you can attach to your arrows to create elemental effects. Do I wish I could favorite some item types so I have ease of access to, say, fire arrows or ice arrows, etc.? Yes, but it's not a deal breaker. Ultra Hand completely reinvents the powers from Breath of the Wild, taking the Magnesis rune and turning it up to 11 because that same base functionality exists, only now you can attach objects to each other and connect Zonai devices to them to create vehicles of mass destruction. Weapons, platforms, speedboats. As long as you have the battery charge, go nuts. There's such an element of freedom while also acknowledging that I was never going to do anything remotely crazy with this build your own creations concept. I'm content knowing I'd look on Twitter and see a Japanese account with this insane contraption for trapping Ganondorf in a noodle shop during the final boss fight. The rest of the powers are brilliant as well. Ascend makes it so easy to escape the newly added caves in this version of the game, and can be used to great effect in certain puzzles and shrines, while Rewind is just useful in about every aspect. Make a mistake? Rewind that shit. Projectile thrown at you? Rewind that shit. Zelda trapped in the past? Rewind that shit. We can't actually do that. Speaking of Zelda, I think this is my favorite incarnation of her character. From the 100 years sealing away the calamity in Breath of the Wild, to now going on an even greater character arc that ends in spectacular fashion that I won't spoil, I absolutely felt for her, and her dedication to ensuring Link would be able to take down Ganondorf. I'm gonna remember that Master Sword pull for a very long time. And speaking of Ganondorf, he's also stellar here. I've yet to decide if this is my favourite Ganondorf reincarnation. I'd like to replay Wind Waker first, but I can confirm this is my favourite Ganondorf boss fight in the series. You can hear more about that and the other bosses in this game in my Tears of the Kingdom boss ranking video. In fact, you can see my opinions on the entire game, as I made multiple Tears of the Kingdom videos on the dungeons, bosses, enemies, Link's core powers, and the Sage abilities. Links in the description to my Zelda playlist. It'll cover way more than I can talk about here. I just had so much fun with Tears of the Kingdom, but I will admit, There was something about this game where I just thought, I'm done, sooner than I would have liked. And that probably comes from both exploring the same world again and having a more pressing story that pushes you forwards as you progress it in comparison to Breath. The Sky Islands and the Depths are fantastic additions that I won't soon forget, but I really hope the next Zelda game goes in a different direction, gives us an entirely new world to explore, and maybe bring back linear dungeon design. The open world can stay, I just want dungeons that aren't so cheesable and more focused experiences. We're partway there, we just need to push forwards a little more. If there was a game though that needed to live up to the hype, it was the Resident Evil 4 remake, because I, as a gamer, am a big fan of the original, and I recognize how influential it was for the gaming industry as a whole, so, when the rumors started floating about that they're remaking the game, it's one of those, what's the point moments? But more importantly, it's one of my boyfriend's favorite games. He's played through the original more times than I can count, I've watched him do it multiple times, it's his comfort game. And as he was staying with me when the remake launched, we decided to play it together for the first time. And what a brilliant experience that was. The Resident Evil 4 remake takes the original and completely reimagines it. All the major areas you recall are still present, from the village square, the church, the castle, the island, and yet it's not a one-for-one remake. Areas have been shifted around, events happen differently, some set pieces were cut and others added to flow better, the story especially feels significantly better paced. Gone are the sequences of padding from the original, instead now interwoven into the plot itself. Take the minecart sequence from the original game, it's just an area Leon has to explore on his way to rescue Ashley, and feels like it could have been cut no problem. Here, that entire sequence is its own chapter with Luis, giving us a buddy cop style back and forth as you explore the mines under the castle and grow closer to our favourite Don Quixote. It makes his death more painful, and having it be at the hands of Krauser instead of Sadler allows the game to build Leon's former major as a villain long before he was introduced in the original. The gun and knife play is also enhanced, you can finally move while aiming, which may not seem like much, but when you play the original and realize you have to stand still while aiming, it's a big change. But it's the knife and the parry system that truly elevates Resident Evil 4 to this perfect flow state. Just about every melee attack via a weapon can be parried with the right timing, wasting a small amount of durability but stopping the player from taking damage. You can also parry projectiles out of the air, and of course, with new fancy knife mechanics, the Krauser-Leon knife combat becomes actually good and not a QTE fest. The best part of the remake, though, are the characters. Leon and Ashley's dynamic is so much more defined and wholesome in this game, from the way she complains about who would swing on the chandeliers, that's fucking weird, to the way she helps you out in puzzles, fighting those knights with you in the castle, and even driving that crane on the island. We've come a long way from Leon, help! Plus, I got a kick out of all the Twitter clips of Ashley getting clotheslined by enemies, I'm sorry. I wish I could go into more detail, but I want to keep this video a manageable length, so consider checking out my Resident Evil 4 Remake chapter ranking video I made earlier this year. I go into what I loved across the game, and it sums up why I think this was the perfect remake that doesn't replace the original. Even more so now that we have the Separate Ways DLC, I will be making a video on that sometime next year. But at the end of the day, my game of the year for 2023 is Lies of P. Because I'm gonna let you guys in on a sneaky little secret. I like Soulsborne games. I know. Crazy, am I right? It's true. But Lies of P does what so many developers have tried and failed to do, which is perfectly capture the vibe of Souls. There are so many Souls-likes out there trying to be the next Dark Souls or Elden Ring, and yet how did Lies of P so effortlessly manage to secure its spot as one of the best? Quite simply, the developers didn't seem afraid to copy mechanics from Software. It's been the joke since the game was first revealed, Pinocchio but Bloodborne, only it ended up being more Pinocchio but Sekiro with some Bloodborne mixed in, and yet the way they wear their inspirations on their sleeve is affectionate. They straddled the line between copying and being genuinely inspired by, and created a unique experience. Maybe it's because they specifically chose to do Pinocchio, a weird premise from the get-go? I think that certainly helped, but I think it's because for everything they do like From Software, they have a little twist to make things more interesting. For example, boss battles, where bosses are able to regenerate health, forcing you to get used to staggering opponents as opposed to whittling down health as the main way to win fights. The rally system from Bloodborne is here, but in Lies of P, it's encouraged through blocking, not aggression. Block some small attacks, strike back to regain your health, rinse, repeat. Most importantly though, Lies of P has an insanely customizable weapon system that sets it apart from everything else on the market. Because the game is insanely linear, with no real optional areas to speak of, you'll face bosses in the order they're intended, and you'll like it. So the flexible customization had to come from your weapons. You have handles, and you have blades. You can detach and attach any combination of handle to any combination of blade. The blade represents the type of damage you do, while the handle represents the moveset and the weapon's scaling. So you want to make sure you're attaching weapons and blades that synergize together. Do you need fire damage? Pop on a flame blade to your hilt and go nuts. Want some long reach, but you're not a fan of the base moveset of any of your long-range weapons? Attach that blade to a handle with a moveset you're more used to and watch the sparks fly. There are some incredibly broken combinations you can come up with, especially when you take Fable Arts into account, if you're willing to invest the time into them. Boss weapons can't take advantage of this system, but instead, they're unique in their own right and feel fantastic to wield. An umbrella that opens up as it parries, a scythe that can become a ranged whip that whirls around you, so cool. The level, enemy, and boss designs are brilliant. I'll direct you to my Lies of P videos on the channel if you haven't seen them already. But TLDR, I think the areas are really well designed while remaining quite linear, as you don't have to explore too far to find everything, which for me makes progression fast and fluid. It works for this specific game. While bosses are some of the toughest I've faced in a while, and getting stuck on some of them gave me that same feeling I had the first time I picked up Dark Souls 2 in 2014. It's a magical sensation and one I won't soon forget. Combine this with a brilliantly told story that is actually coherent, a handful of sad yet interesting side quests to complete with fleshed out characters' interactions, and you have a game that I'll remember for years and years to come. Plus, this game gave us the best piece of music this year, Feel. Close your eyes, subscribe to me, press the like button and comment all night. Thanks for watching, baby. That was so dumb. My voice is so short after recording this script, I don't even think I sung very well. And that's it for 2023. Thank you so much everyone for tuning in. On top of some amazing games, my channel has grown exponentially this year, and I really hope that I can continue to create videos that make you guys smile, laugh, or just get you through those tough times. I never expected to have 13,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I can only hope that we continue to go higher together. Are there any games I mentioned in today's video that you haven't played that maybe you're considering now after hearing what I've had to say? Let me know in the comments down below, and be sure to buy Cassette Beasts as soon as possible. My socials are on screen now, feel free to follow where you feel comfortable. I'd recommend my Twitter, my Blue Sky, or of course my Discord. I'm not terribly active there, but you get video updates, so it's worth being in there. A massive shout out to my patrons over on Patreon for supporting me for December. You guys are amazing. It's gonna get rough in January, so I really, really appreciate it. Fair warning, there will be no videos from the 1st to the 7th of January. I'll be taking a short break and I'll be back the week after. Thanks for watching. Adios.